Welcome. Please enjoy watching me roll my proverbial rock up the proverbial hill, very Sisyphean style. My rock being Dark Masters, and the hill being telling you all about Dark Masters. Before we begin, I have a question for you. What are we? Not you and I, mind you. I don't really care to know much about you. I don't know you. I'm sorry if that's... we could maybe get to know each other over the course of this video. What I mean by what are we is, what is Dark Masters? What are we as Dark Masters? We are all Dark Masters, obviously, in our hearts. So what are we? I hope to, by the end of this video, tell you how it all started, the trajectory of it all, and kind of where we are now. And give you all, I think, embedded in your brains, the thing that I espouse the most when talking about specifically this deck, which is to adapt. You must adapt, you must be changing consistently in order to match what your opponents are doing, because you are not playing a good deck. That was especially true back in the day, though I think it's still slightly true now, though not as bad as it used to be. This deck was designed around Apocalymon. It may come as a surprise to you, but from my reading of this whole situation is that Bandai very purposely made a lot of the power of the deck into APOC. And they assumed people would try splashing it other places, but because of the restrictions of APOC, they assumed it would be stuck in Dark Masters. And because of that, with an exceptionally strong boss monster, they wanted to limit its strength in other ways. So they made a lot of the other cards very bad. Level 5's effects only work on play. Level 6's delete themselves at the end of your opponent's turn, and you can't Evo on top of them aside from very specific cards. The only other non-level 5 or 6 card in the deck is level 4 that sucks as well. Like, I understood what they were going for, but it just wasn't good. And so once Apocalymon rightfully got hit, the deck kind of fell into obscurity until one individual, whose name I do not know, discovered a very unique set of powers the deck still had. And we'll go over that in the old playstyle. So, one of the two unique things about the deck is that the level 5s, all of them, have on play, reveal the top 4 cards of your deck, add 2 level 6 or higher cards from among them to your hand, return the rest to the bottom of your deck. That is a exceptionally good search option. It's a generic search that does not restrict itself to color, it restricts itself to level. So if you're playing a surplus of level 6 or 7s in a Mega Zoo style deck, you are going to consistently add 2 cards every time you activate it. The downside of this card is that it costs 6. All of them cost 6. And that is the limiting factor. Now, you can now plus off of the level 5 here. You can change it into something more powerful, a level 6 itself. End of your turn, by deleting one of your Digimon, you may play one Digimon with the Dark Master's trait from your hand to an empty space in your breeding area without paying the cost. So for a cost of 6 on your first turn, you get out a level 5 that cheats itself into a level 6 in some way, at the cost of not getting the breeding area. Okay, that's actually quite good. That's an okay effect. There are... Sovereigns was a deck that did something very similar, and they were exceptionally powerful. They got a couple tops here and there. They were like a tier 3 rogue deck, and that's still fine. The problem is our level 6 are bad. Almost all of them are bad. There's one good one, kind of, one okay one, kind of, and 2 really bad ones. One is slightly better than the other. We'll go over their effects really quick. So all of the Dark Master level 6s have on play when attacking, do something. Piedmon deletes something unsuspended. Machinedramon de-digivolves something twice, which is the good one. Just to clarify, that is the good one. Piedmon is the okay one. The other 2 are really bad. Metal Seedramon was to, on play when attacking, balance a level 5 or lower to your opponent's hand, which for level 6 blue card at that time was not good. Most other blue cards that were bouncing at the time at the same rate and the same level were doing it to either the lowest level your opponent controls or to a very specific card, both of which were completely good, fine effects that would have been completely good and fine on our level 6 boss monster since we lost APOC. However, unfortunately, They decided to keep it kind of low. I'm not sure why. The other card, which is worse for reasons that we'll get into, is Puppet, which lets you bottom deck a suspended Digimon. Now, I understand what you're thinking. Oh, well, there's ways you can kind of use these effects, and plus, at level 6s, you can kind of at least make use of the bodies, go into like a powerful level 7, like Piedmon could go into a Ruin mode. Well, unfortunately, they have a couple of limiters to them. The first one, and one of the more notable ones, though both are quite debilitating, is on your turn, you cannot Digivolve into anything other than a white Digimon. Devastating. Truly, truly devastating. You cannot make use of these level 6s in a way of just being like a quick cheat out a level 6, search 2 cards, turn them into something useful on the next turn. Now, that is not something you can do most of the time. There are very few white level 7s that make good use of the board state. There's no like white level 7 Ruin mode, for example. Luckily, though, they made the cards even worse. They said, this seems too strong, so we're going to hit them again. At the end of your opponent's turn, they all delete themselves, no matter what. And then you may play one Digimon card with the Dark Master's trait, other than the one that was deleted. So if it's Piedmon, you can't play out a Piedmon with its effect. If it's Machinedramon, you can't play out Machinedramon, etc., etc. But you do it without paying the cost, which is kind of nice, because it's at the end of your opponent's turn. So let's say you swing with Piedmon, your opponent doesn't interact with it, and then it deletes itself, and you play out Machinedramon in a like trap card style way of like, ha, because you left my Digimon here, it is going to now turn into something else that will punish you. Maybe Puppet, you swung out, they ignored your Pied, and now you get to bottom deck the thing that swung out. Fantastic. Most of the time, these things would die, however. They have no protection, they're not very good, they're not very big, they're kind of just whatever, and a competent opponent would delete them, or they just wouldn't care, because they just wouldn't play into the ones that mattered. Which is valid. That's fair. This individual that I mentioned prior, the one that discovered the new playstyle of the deck that made it somewhat okay, discovered the second power, however, which is that they can Digivolve into white Digimon. And there is a specific white Digimon that works quite well with the deck, being Omnimon Zwart as listed here. For those of you who don't know, I do not follow you. This is a card from BT5. It is before my time, it may be before your time. It is a very niche card. However, for a cost of 6, you can Digivolve on top of a black or purple level 6 card. You can then, when Digivolving, trash the top 3 cards of your deck and play up to 2 black or purple Digimon cards with a play cost of 8 or less from your trash without paying the memory cost. The second effect is nice. When attacking, return a level 6 from your sources to hand, and then delete something unspended with a play cost of 12 or less on your opponent's side of the board. But that one didn't really matter that much. It was more so that you would play out 2 black or purple Digimon. Well, the Dark Masters come in colors of purple. Their purple inherit is Retaliation. Black, the black inherit is Reboot. Blue, the blue inherit is Blocker. And then green, the green inherit is Piercing. Well, we have the 2 colors available to us, and that kind of led the direction of the deck. Omnimon Zwart being able to play out 2 level 5 cards, like say 2 Giga or Lady Devi being the purple variant, or some combination of the 2. And then they would search the top 4 cards each and add 2 pretty consistently. So you're going up huge in advantage. And then end of your turn, you could delete one of your level 5s to place a level 6 in Raising to set up for another Omnimon Zwart next turn. Or you could delete the Omnimon Zwart, keep both level 5s on board, and place the level 6 in Raising to set up for another Omnimon Zwart. Now, that's really cool and really good. And there was a very unique Omnimon-specific variant. And we'll talk a little bit more about that when we get to the Tamers, because the Tamers were a bit prominent here in the old style of play, much like they are in the new style of play. But the deck still wasn't that good. The Omnimon variant saw some success, very, very niche success, but it wasn't very good. Come BT16, we start getting more powerful aces, and it seems like the deck is going to the game is going to continually print more powerful aces. That's when the deck clicked for me as a whole. I started playing it towards the end of BT15, and I saw potential with the next set. I knew Vikemon was a house, and I saw into future sets there would be more powerful aces. Very consistently in this channel, if you have watched it prior, I would always talk about new aces that came up whenever doing set reviews that I used to do a lot in the past. and be like, oh, that's a buff for Dark Masters, the deck's meta again, let's go, hell yeah, hell yeah, hell yeah. And that is what I think truly brought the deck to its core state, which was play out multiple level 5s using Omnimon Zord effect, go huge advantage, set up to do it again next turn, and then threaten your opponent with a wall of level 5s to ace them with powerful aces on their turn. A couple of things to note. First and foremost, the effect to not digivolve on top of level 6s is only on your turn. Meaning that if, say, they prevented a purple level 7 ace, you could blast into it on top of the Piedmon on your opponent's turn, which is something else that was very unique. Unfortunately, that was cute, never really came up, and the deck was still kind of bad. It got another buff, however, going forward with the Shoto Mother combo. The deck already played Mother D Reaper as just a free deletion if you didn't want to just like hard play a Giga turn 1 or a Lady Debbie turn 1. However, that still wasn't enough. And we'll talk a little bit more about Shoto Mother and its impacts on the deck and the way it kind of played in the future when we get to Tamers. The deck was bad, and then new support hit. And it was still kind of a little shaky, and then more support hit, and I think people kind of like realized a really unique style of playing the game. So what's changed? Well, as you can see, our two friends here, the Giga and the Vikemon, are a lot smaller now. They play a lot smaller role in the deck. In fact, in the current list that I run around 7 aces, but that number can be changed and brought down. I wouldn't hate it at all. As well as I play 4 of these Search level 5s. I play all 4 Gigadramon, and that is it. That's it. There's no more Search level 5s that we really care about because they're just not as needed as they used to be. Instead, the things that the deck cares about are the new level 6s, which are quite good, the new level 5, which is a custom card, and taxes. We're going to break them down really quickly in their own little style of stuff. So please bear with me as I teach you about Dark Masters. Now, why a new primer? Because there's a huge style of shift in the play that we used to do. It used to be set up a wall of level 5s, try to recruit advantage, try to outlast your opponent, and hope that you could just set up a board that's big enough that they will eventually lose. That stopped working. It doesn't really work as much anymore. Most decks will kill you very quickly if you just keep giving them huge amounts of memory every single turn and setting up a 2 level 5 6k DP Digimon. That doesn't work. It doesn't work. And because I was right, the whole style of Dark Masters from when I started playing it is that, well, we're gonna need to adjust the aces. Well, we're gonna need to adjust the ratios. We're gonna need to adjust for the meta that we're in contextually to find the best cards to be playing, because that's what the whole shtick of the deck is adaptation. You are not going to be able to just have a one-size-fit-all deck, because in a scenario where, let's say, the aces were still prevalent, but maybe Vikemon wasn't that good in the meta. Maybe Vikemon was so important in the meta that it changed a losing matchup into a guaranteed 100% win rate matchup if you just didn't brick and played smart. That's how important some of the aces are. For context, I'm talking about the Demon Lord matchup. Vikemon turned that matchup from a 0% win rate into a 100% win rate matchup very consistently. Starting up, let's talk about the 5s. There are 2 different sets of 5s. On the left here, you see we have the Searchers. And on the right here, we have the Players. On the left, the Searchers, they play out in raising at the end of turn. They're not very proactive about it. They set up a little bit, and they search to keep refilling stuff. On the right, we have the old player, Mephisto, which was a, at best, play cost 5 card, that on deletion, if specifically deleted by effect, so if you DP reduced it, you would be able to get around it pretty consistently. You can play 1 level 6 Dark Master trait card from your hand or trash without paying the cost. This card was quite nice. You're usually playing it as like a 1 or 2 of, because it was 1, searchable from the deck, because it's considered a level 6 card when revealed from the deck. As well as it was a way of like kind of like trapping your opponent and saying, hey, if you attempt to delete this guy and like kill me, I'm going to play out Machinedramon or Pied and hopefully pop or digivolve your thing. And if you ignore it, I'm going to attempt to ace on top of it with a good purple ace and punish you for doing so. The new, better play card is Worumon. This card is essentially almost everything we'd ask for in a card entirely without making it disgustingly broken. If you let this card play from trash, it would be an infinite loop by itself, unless your opponent had a way to out it outside of deletion, which is probably not a good thing that Bandai wants. I think that would be cool, but maybe that's just me because I'm a sociopath. So, on play, you can play one Dark Master trait card, trait Digimon card specifically, from your hand without paying the cost. Then at the end of your turn, the end of this turn, delete the card this effect played. Full stop. So, that matters because sometimes you'll play this guy out on your opponent's turn. We'll explain in a little bit, but on deletion, you may play one face-up Dark Master's trait card from your security stack without paying the cost. And then at the end of your turn, delete the Digimon this effect played. This is really nice because you can do a lot of really cute things with it. One, you can swing into Wormonze. If it dies in security, you can play out a guy from security and get its effect. If your opponent deletes it on their turn, you get an effect on their turn as well to play from security. And then on your turn, you can swing in with that guy. It's great. It's fantastic. And you want it at 4 because it's so good at fixing a lot of the problems in the deck. Fuck. Anyways, we have the 4 Stooges here. We have the 4 Bozos. These are the 4 new cards. Now, I want you guys to guess which ones they buffed. I know they're on screen right now. Don't worry about it. You can even read them. Because the answer should be the 2 weakest ones, right? Metal C and Puppet. And you're half right if you thought that. They did buff Metal C. Now Metal C is on play when attacking. One of your opponent's Digimon and their tamers can't suspend until their turn ends. A exceptionally powerful effect. Truly genius. The other one they ended up buffing was the best one. They buffed Machinedramon for some reason. They made its Digivolve to target 2 Digimon now instead of 1. I don't know why they ended up buffing Machine, but it has made it so that way Machine and Metal C are leagues and bounds better than Piedmon and Puppet. Pied and Puppet both kind of suck a little bit, especially Puppet. I think Puppet's cheeks. It's so bad, but you play it because of the names. You actually care about playing all of these cards now. They've had some slight changes to them. Some very game-changing changes to them. First, they all have the effect that if this card is in hand, you may play it out if you do not have any other Digimon aside from Digimon with Dark Masters in their text. And you can reduce the cost by 5. At turn end, delete the Digimon this effect played. Meaning, for a cost of 6, you can just hard play any of these Digimon out and get their effect. Fantastic. That's the exact same going ratio as level 5s that you've had up to now. So, instead of just like waiting the turn, you can immediately get their effect. A bit niche if it weren't for their other effects. They also all have the on deletion, that if no specific color that they have is in the face-up security cards, place this Digimon face-up as the bottom security card. Fantastic. Fantastic. It is now a 6 cost. Do their effect, delete the Digimon, and recover 1. I think that would be good enough. I think that would be good enough for the deck to have a meaningful increase in the rogue tier. That wasn't all. They were like, hey, let's give him another buff. All of the Digimon have a security effect now, where if this card was face up, and then it's checked, you may play 1 level 5 or lower card with Dark Masters in its text from your hand or trash without paying the cost, meaning that you can recycle your level 5s super consistently. You can either get a search, you can use Wormonzemon, or you can get out the Mephisto, depending what you need. Super good. So you go Wormonze, you stick this guy in security, any one of them after getting their effect. They swing in, they don't want to delete Wormonze, so like say they like stun it or like they bounce it to hand. They hit the guy in security. The guy says, you know what, Wormonze, come on back out. Wormonze then plays out another level 6 from hand, getting their effect immediately on your opponent's turn. It's a wonderful piece of interaction to do on your opponent's turn that is quite hard to actually play around depending on what level 6 you have in hand. The best one obviously being Machine, to have consistently, though Metal Siegemon is no slouch at all. And the other two have more niche applications, but they are still very usable. They did nerf them, however. They nerfed them quite heftily, which all turns, this Digimon can only Digivolve into a Pokemon, meaning that you can no longer go into any of your Omnis or Zwart. You cannot use the same style of deck if you want to use these much more powerful cards. And so it has essentially killed the old playstyle, and you have to adapt. And I think that is okay. Again, the whole theme of the deck, in my opinion, has always been adaptation. So changing into this new style, I think, is very fitting for what the deck has always been about. They sent us a father. They sent us a new father to interact with and play with, which is, damn, it really sucks hard playing a level 5 for 6. What if we gave you a draw spell? 3 cost, Spiral Mountain. If you do not have a Spiral Mountain in the battle area, you can ignore this card's color requirements, though for our deck, it's actually not too difficult to meet the color requirements. Being white, you can either meet them by just hatching a Digimon, a Mother Reaper in Raising, or have one of the many white tamers that we want to play in the deck already on the field, and boom, you've met the color requirements and you can play multiples of them. The main effect is just draw 2, and this card goes to the battle area. And then end of your opponent's turn, delay, you may play one face-up Digimon card with Dark Master's trait from your security stack without paying the cost. At the end of your turn, delete the Digimon this effect played. The effective playstyle is drop this card for 2, or for 3, I mean, and then put your opponent, let's say you've already, have a Dark Masters in security, or you got enough memory to play this for 3, go to 0, and then put your opponent at 6, play out like Machine Digivolve 2. Your opponent does either like some checks, but they don't get to the last check that you just did. Maybe they put you to like 2 security, 3 security. At the end of their turn, you can immediately play out the Machine Digimon again, Digivolve 2 more, and then when it comes back to your turn, swing the Machine Digimon and Digivolve 2 more. It is a super nice way of making more consistent use of not only your deck, because you're drawing, but also of the cards that you are putting into security, getting value off of them immediately, and then they will go right back, which makes them actually kind of difficult to interact with, because one of the worst things for our deck is being bounced. It also has a security effect, which says you may play one Digimon card with the Dark Master trait from your hand or trash without paying the cost, then add this card to the hand. At the end of the turn, delete the Digimon this effect played. Another great security bomb. Your opponent hits it, they weren't expecting it, and then boom, you Machine Digimon, or you Metal C, or you Pied, or you Puppet, and you're quite happy about that. This card is fantastic. It is nothing less than a 4 of in almost every single deck, just because of how good it is for us, and how well it synergizes with the style of deck that we play now, which we'll get to when we get to the Tamers. There was that other little moniker here in case you guys forgot, which being this guy. This guy in the middle, this guy right here in the middle, very important. Very, very important, and we'll get to why in a second. Now, new cards mean new Apocalypse. And the new Apocalypse, it's time for pizza. Pizza time, brother. Pizza time. When this card would be played, by placing one of each Dark Master's trait card with different names from your security stack under this card, you can reduce the cost by 4 for each card played. If you have all 4 of the different named Dark Masters in security, you can reduce this card down to 1. And then it has the on play when dissolving effect. You may play one of each Dark Master trait card with different names from your sources without paying the cost. Then all of your Dark Master trait Digimon gain Rush for the turn. At turn end, the Digimon this effect played. There is a world where you can get out Dark Masters and keep turn, quote unquote. Let's say your opponent puts you to 7 memory, and then you just hard play a Piedmon for a cost of 6. It will have Rush, technically. That is a very unlikely world. I would also like to note that this Apocalypse and all level 5s and other cards, other than the 4 main Dark Masters, do not have the Dark Master's trait. So it's only the 4 main Dark Masters that this effect can play, and it's also the only ones that gain Rush. So that's something to keep in mind. This card is completely solid. I run this at some amount of copies. I would not run it at more than 3. I would not run it at less than 1. So 3 or 2. The reason for that is because sometimes your opponent will try and get around a lot of the security effects of your cards, especially with how powerful the new War Monzemon is. They really don't want you just kind of cycling that over and over and over again. So they will just try to ignore you and maybe set up for a big single turn where they can kill and push through everything. This card punishes them for doing so. It is also a very unique card in the fact that you could use it as a, I'm going to push 4 checks here, But you could also use it as a, I'm going to reduce the play cost by like 8 or 12 and just get 3 Dark Master effects immediately. And that's really good still, even by itself. It's definitely worth it, I would say, most of the time. So it's either removal or it is just a way to kind of just interact with your opponent. Both quite well, quite good. It'd be remiss of me to not talk about the Prior Apocalypse, which I will still play in my list. So for those of you that don't know what Old Apocalypse did, when this card be played by placing up to 3 Dark Master trait cards with different names from your battle area or trash under it, reduce the play cost by 4 for each one, reducing it down to a play cost of 3. At the end of your turn, by placing 1 level 6 card from your trash as Digimon's bottom Digivolution card, activate 1 on play effect of that card as an effect of this Digimon. Then you can trash 2 cards of one of your off of your opponent's deck for each of this Digimon's level 6 sources. So if you do the effect and also place 3 cards underneath, you will trash 8 cards from your opponent's deck, which is quite good. And you will get an effect of maybe one of your Dark Masters or maybe one of your more powerful aces. This card is very important in control matchups because typically you're not going to be wanting to check the security of like something like Lucamon as an example. And even if this card isn't security, because of the way the deck works, eventually all your security will be gone and it'll just be Dark Masters in there. And you can get this card back using the Mephistomon effect, meaning that you will eventually get there. And because our deck also doesn't draw that much, you're still going to beat most decks in the long grind game, even if you don't end up seeing this card. However, it's quite nice as well, just because of the fact that it can make use of really powerful ace effects that we have in the deck, such as things like Vikemon being able to win certain matchups. One of the reasons for that is because if you had a Vikemon in trash but not one in hand, you could just turn the Apocalypse into a Vikemon if you really wanted to or needed to at the moment. The other cards that exist and are here and around, these two are technically Dark Master cards in some way. The Golfmon was an attempt at turning the mill condition into a kill your opponent condition instead, where on play when Digivolving by placing 1 level 5 card with Dark Master's trait from your hand or trash as your Digimon's bottom Digivolution source to lead one of your opponent's level 5 or lower Digimon. An awful card. Just a penis bad, shitty, garbage card. Not good. Awful effect. I don't know what the intent was, other than, once again, this card was made, like, they had already designed it, and they're like, I don't want to change it. Pokemon's really good. He's going to be around. It's going to be like a secondary effect that the deck's going to be able to do. And it's really going to turn it online because it's going to give them a win condition finally. It's just bad. It's really bad. And then it has the when attacking effect by returning 7 cards from your opponent's trash to the bottom of the deck, unsuspend this Digimon. And that is an IA once per turn. So technically this card can swing out multiple times. You would tuck a Mephisto, and Mephisto would give this guy, I think it was like a 2 or 3k DP buff. Let me double check. We can literally just look at the guys. 2k DP buff. So bringing them to 13k DP. Swing out for as many cards as your opponent's trash. And, that's also trash hate. This card was never used in, I think, any serious attempt at making Dark Masters good. Period. Full stop. It just was not a good deck. Or a good card in general. The other one is the Bilemon, level 4, that came out in the original set of cards. Blocker all turns when one of your Apocalypse or Digimon with Dark Master's trait will leave the battle area other than by one of your effects. By deleting the Digimon, prevent one of those Digimon from leaving. The more I read this card, the more I just don't understand exactly what the intent was. When I first saw it, I thought the intent was like, oh, you could like protect them from their own effect. That's kind of cute. No, you can't. Okay. Well, like, there's like a level 3 coming at some point, right? No, there wasn't. So the intent is you evo in the back into a level 3, and then you evo into this guy, and then you promote him, and then you play out level 5, and you delete level 5, and that's for 6. Pass over turn, you get a level 6 in raising, and then you promote the level 6 on the next turn, and then this guy protects them from deleting your guy. It's like, okay, well, he's meant for the Apocalypse. It's like, okay, yeah, you could play Apocalypse for 3 and still keep turning, and then play this guy out for 4, but why? Why would you? Why would you? I've never understood the point of this card entirely. And you're looking to say, oh, maybe we could just play it out for 4. we're giving you 6 memory so consistently already. There's no shot in hell we're being able to play 4 with such little memory game in the deck raw. You need to play memory game outside of the deck with tamers and options in order to like keep turn consistently, play this guy out, and then play out a level 5. Not realistic. And then play. So I guess the way you do it is like play out level 5, search, delete level 5, get to level 6 and back, and then you play out Vilemon for 4 once you promote the level 6. And that's just not reasonable. It's just not a good card. Neither one of these cards are good or seem like they're actually intended to work with what the archetype was realistically wanting to do. On to more cards for the new playstyle deck. Let's talk about the aces. My ace. So, if you can see here in the big, kind of blurry letters, all of the Dark Masters have this play from hand effect. Unfortunately, that effect only works if you have no other Digimon than Digimon with Dark Masters in their decks. Meaning that if you blast Ace on top of one of the level 5s, you are immediately punished for doing so. Because now you can no longer play Dark Masters until that Ace is gone. Meaning that you are overflowing probably around 4 memory. Not a great time. Luckily for us, Monzemon lets us cheat that effect. Beautiful. Makes aces more viable in the list. 2 of the more prominent aces, in my opinion, are Vikemon Ace. Came out in BT16 and still a fucking house. And Black War Greymon Ace. The only reason that we have any game whatsoever against Omnimon. Full stop. Without this card, we would have literally 0 game against Omnimon pretty consistently prior to this version of the list. I also like to play a suite of other aces like Shadow Seraphi, or like the Gargomon, or there's a purple Dark Dramon. There we go. Just because I dislike purple hybrid. I hate purple hybrid, the passion of my heart. So I like having just a suite of like one-ofs aces that if they call a color, and I have like multiple level 5s on board, I'm going to be able to punish them because I will be able to go into some ace that will hurt them. Because all of those aces also stun tamers, or de-digivolve, or both, and they're also quite nice. So yeah, that's like the idea of aces. They're not going to be a mainstay like they used to be, however, they are still something that should be feared when you're playing into the deck. It's also something you should make use of. Bluff if you have an ace in hand is like one of the things that this deck does a lot is bluffing. Just bluff your opponent sometimes. Be like, and you're looking at a board state where you're 100% dead, and then you just play out like a War Monzemon, which you don't have a Dark Master in hand, but like you're just like threatening an ace, and you're like, yeah, this is the move for sure. You don't see it coming. I'm gonna cook you, hopefully. One of the other good reasons for aces is because you can still search them with the Gigadramon in deck. Again, you're a lot less consistent, unfortunately, when searching now because of how many tamers we're playing and how little aces we're playing. But nonetheless, you're going to be able to consistently find them off of the Gigadramon search. Options. In the list, you can play some options. The best one that I've found is Revelation of Light, because we can play a larger Kari package than we're currently playing. And this is like a pseudo ruin mode on your opponent's turn that lasts until the end of your turn, and it's also quite nice. The main effect literally does nothing. However, it does have a really interesting interaction with our deck. Because it searches the security stack, whenever you are done searching, you will shuffle the security stack, meaning that all of your face-up Dark Masters will go down. So let's say you have like 2 Machine Dramon in hand and 1 in security. Now you're able to use a Machine Dramon again and tuck it underneath, essentially making that recovery actual recovery, allowing you to go further. It's usually bad for you because you really want those security effects, but it's interesting nonetheless. I would say most of their options, however, besides our father that I mentioned, Sir Spiral Mountain, not super relevant. Now, on to Tamers. Allow me to explain a little bit about what's changed, because there's been a couple things that have changed throughout our time existing. Let's talk a little bit about the old Tamers. As you can see here, Mother D Reaper exists. Let's switch over. Mother D Reaper and Shoto were, I think, a backbone in making this deck actually like a tier 2, tier 3 threat. So it is one of the reasons I was actually able to play so high. It's because Shoto plus Mother was able to stave off our opponent in a way that allowed us to build up and start threatening our opponent consistently. Also, Shoto just giving blocker to your level 5s means that going into your aces meant that you would still have a blocker and you would get their powerful effect. Fantastic, really good. The Tai Kami and Matt Ishida were great for gaining some memory on your turn. If your opponent just had like some level 6s laying around, the main reason was because they gave your Omnimon sec +1. So 2 Tai and Mats essentially meant that every Omni is checking for 3 every single time pretty consistently, and you're going to be doing that pretty consistently with how many different kinds of Omnis you were playing. And then finally were analog use, because you wanted to find names very specifically. You were looking for your level 5s a lot, and then with every analog youth, you essentially reduce the cost of your Omnimon Zwart by 1, because you would delete the Omnimon Zwart using the end of turn effects level 5s they ended up playing out, and you would gain that memory back. So there are a couple times where you get like 3 analog use, and you would be able to keep turn off of doing the Omnimon Zwart, and you could Zwart a second time in a single turn depending on what your board state looked like. And that felt fantastic. You play none of these tamers. Not a single one. This is for the Omnimon variant, and you cut it very quickly into the variant that I was talking about. We don't play Zwart anymore, and we also aren't looking for names specifically in Trash, aside from 1, as consistently as we used to be. And Shoto and Mother are pair banned, and you cannot use them together anymore. So with all of these 3 things happening, the deck had to change. However, I think the important thing to note is what the Tamers did, which they added consistency, but more so, especially the Shoto, which I think is the one that took the deck to the next level, was about slowing down your opponent in some way. Welcome to taxes. Now, I understand that you look at these Tamers and you immediately want to vomit, and that's valid. This is the suite of Tamers that I think hold some amount of consideration in the deck currently. Going forward, that may change depending on what the meta is, but with the current meta and how effect-based it is, and I'll prove my point in just a second, how effect-based it is, these cards are the main ones to consider. Now, I'm going to cut them down slightly to the 4 best Tamers, in my opinion. First off, Matt Ishida from Structure Deck 6. When one of your Digimon is deleted, you may spend this Tamer to gain a memory. This card is only active on your turn. You can use it pretty consistently every single turn, which is a plus. However, it fulfills a role very similar to what Analog Youth did in the past, which is it makes your play cost 1 less memory. When you play out the level 6, it's going to get deleted. Matt Ishida makes it cost 5 instead of 6, or for every mat used, reduce the cost by 1. Not bad, but unlike Analog Youth, that is all it does. It doesn't provide you further beyond that. If this card was all turns, there would definitely be an argument for it. However, because of the fact that it is only your turn, it, I think, is not worth our time. Next up, Mimi Tachikawa from BT3. All turns, whenever a player uses an option, you may suspend this Tamer to gain 1 memory. This card is actually very interesting. You will see a lot of Royal Knight control players playing it, with Sakuya seeing a resurgence in popularity. This card also sees a resurgence in playability, as well as I think every deck to some extent will be playing some level of consistency cards. So you can essentially just read this card as make your opponent's training cost 1 more. So a 3-cost training instead of a 2-cost training is a huge deal. However, unlike, say, the Royal Knight deck, where they play a suite of options, they play a good amount of them, and they can play more if they would like, between 4 of the new searching option, and then the Royal Knight's Purge, potentially like some Crimson Blaze, etc., etc. We only play 4 options, meaning that we can only trigger this card 4 times. And it's a lot more specific on what our opponent's doing. Whereas every deck currently is playing by effect and has to play by effect most of the time for the average deck, you do not have to use options. If you just have your hand already, you need to use the training in hand. You can kind of just ignore it and ignore us and continue on moving. But I think this card is not as useful. Finally, onto the closest Tamer to usability in the deck is the Memory Setter Kari from BT8. Your turn, when a card is added to security stack, you may suspend this Tamer to gain 1 memory. that will always be active, and because it's a memory setter, you play like 2 of and get consistent use out of it really well. I think this card is good, and if you play it, I don't think you're necessarily wrong. However, I'm going to tell you you're wrong anyways, and the reason for that is that it does not slow you down your opponent at all. There's nothing on this card that slows down your opponent in the slightest. In fact, because it is a memory setter, it incentivizes your opponent to go harder and extend more, which can be valuable at times, but other times it will just kill you if you do not have the answer for their overextension. Which is why I cut this card down. On to the remaining tamers. I play, I think, all of these at 4, except for maybe Hakuto, who's at 3. Allow me to explain it. The worst one is Hakuto. This one is, I think, the most meta-specific card. Start of your turn, if your opponent has 3 or more tamers, gain a memory. This is whatever. And then all turns when an opponent plays a Digimon by spending this tamer, gain 1 memory. If that Digimon is level 4 or higher, draw... if the Digimon is level 4 or higher, and draw 1 if it's level 3. This card gets some slight use in every matchup. I think most decks have level 3 searchers that they want to play out, or they're going to be playing out cards Digimon by effect specifically. Should the meta change, I think this card could get cut quite easily. The main reason that we can comfortably play it is because it is a draw tamer and a memory tamer. The first effect doesn't really matter. The second effect is the main thing. If it did not draw, I think would have a lot harder time justifying it in the deck. However, one of the things that is currently lacking in the deck is draw. Once we're fully set up and we're able to start using our security effects to cycle Gigadramon, we are completely fine and happy. However, until that happens, there are certain hands where we have 2 cards in hand after turn 3, and we're just waiting and hoping our top deck is good enough. So tamers that I maybe haven't thought of, the main thing that you want right now is some way to slow your opponent down, first, and second is draw power. Those are the 2 main things. Moving on to what I think are the 3 best tamers in the deck that will see consistent play at almost every time throughout the rest of the deck's current lifespan are Kari Kamiya from BT4, Digimon Emperor from BT8, and Keenan Crier from BT13. We'll start with the most obvious one, being Digimon Emperor. Just slows down your opponent, gives you draw. It's quite literally everything I described in Hakuto, but consistently active against almost every single deck. In fact, even decks that don't Digivolve in the back, they can still make use of level 4s and 5s, such as Royal Knights making use of Omeka and Magna. And so being able to delete them consistently and turn them into a draw for you is still worth Digimon Emperor in the list. That's how desperate we are for draw. On to the other 2, Kari Kamiya and Keenan Crier. They both have a similar effect. Keenan is just a better Kari in some ways, so we'll start with him and then we'll explain the difference. So Keenan costs 3 on play. Your opponent may trash a tamer or option card in their hand. If they don't, gain a memory and draw 1. Boom. Draw or ripping a card from your opponent's hand. Both really good. Both of them are really solid effects that you love to see. If they don't, you get the draw on the memory, making this a 2-cost tamer. And if they do, I mean, you still want to Keenan out and you ripped a card from hand. That's completely fine with us. On to the shared quote-unquote effect that both of them have. Keenan is opponent's turn only. Kari is all turns. Kari is all turns when your security stack is removed from, gain a memory. And Keenan is when an effect plays a Digimon by spending this tamer, gain a memory. Now you may be asking to yourself, that makes no sense. Why are you considering them shared effects? Well, allow me to explain. If we scroll back up to the bozos, if this card was face up, you may play 1 level 5 or lower Dark Masters card in its text from your hand or trash without paying the cost. Your opponent checks this, that triggers Kari. Keenan does not say if your opponent plays. It says if it is one is played by effect on your opponent's turn, gain a memory. So you will be able to steal a memory both with Keenan and with Kari off of the security effect of the Dark Masters. Here. Wormonzemon will trigger the Keenan if you, for some reason, did not trigger off the Dark Masters effect. You could just go Wormonzemon off the Dark Masters effect and then trigger the Keenan there. And finally, Spiral Mountain triggers both of them. Spiral Mountain lets you play from security, which triggers the Kari because you're removing it from security. And then Keenan triggers because you play by effect. So, in a way, those two tamers are proactive and reactive. You are able to proactively use them by triggering them with your own effects. With, like, say your opponent doesn't want to check, you have a Spiral Mountain out, at the end of their turn, let's say they put you to 1, you have like 2 Karis and a Keenan, which is totally possible because you play 4 each. You can trigger the Spiral Mountain, play out the guy, get the effect, have a attacker for next turn to do some chip, and then trigger Keenan to gain a memory, and both Karis to gain 2 memory, putting you to 4 memory now on your opponent's after your opponent's turn, and then they will both reset, meaning they will be active again on your opponent's turn to make use of in any way you see fit. They are the most synergistic tamers for the list in the way that they end up activating consistently on your opponent's turn. You cannot make use of them, or you can make use of them to punish your opponent as a tax maneuver. Say against Huddy, for example, your opponent goes into Huddymon for 4, they go to 0, they play out by effect, Keenan will steal a memory. If you have multiple Keenans, you will steal 2 memory, 3 memory, 4 memory. The way that Hakuto works is very similar to Keenan in that aspect. And then if they ever check security, Kari will then be stealing memory from them. Even if they are not checking a Dark Master specific effect, you are still going to be able to consistently make use of Kari. So both of them are quite good. Warmanzemon triggers both of the Digimon, by the way. If you play out Warmanzemon on your turn, or both of the tamers, by the way. Play out Warmanzemon on your turn, your opponent deletes the Warmanzemon. You play out from security, triggering both the Kari and the Keenan. If you have multiples of these tamers, Warmanzemon for 6, putting your opponent to 2, now says, let's say you have 2 of each. If your opponent deletes it, you get a free level 6 that will attack on your opponent's turn, that has a on-play effect that can be very impactful in the moment. But even if the on-play effect is not impactful, you are now gaining 4 memory on that card's deletion as well, stealing turn from your opponent. And they have to play around it quite intensively. They can't just swing in either, because even if they like beat over it and try to pierce, you will still trigger the same way. There's no way to play around it realistically, which makes it quite difficult. Funnily enough, if like say you have a single Dark Masters card in security, and that's the only card in your security, if your opponent attempts to, like, say, I don't even know like an effect that would trigger it this specific way, so I'm gonna move on from it. I was like, well, maybe like if they like deleted it and then they trash something after the deletion and battle went through, but I was like, you could like dodge it by having the card come out. But realistically, if you're the only ones I could think of were like cards that would trigger before the Warmanzemon effect would trigger, and so it actually wouldn't work the way you wanted it to. But that's okay. That's okay. Don't pretend like that didn't happen. Simply enough. Moving on. Why these tamers? Well, I think the answer is quite obvious. In the most recent Orlando Regional from yesterday, the 7th of January, you can see the top 16 decks. Every single one of these decks plays out by effect in some way. There's a single deck here that does not play out by effect in some way. The Huddymon obviously plays by effect. The Jessamon obviously plays by effect. The Knight obviously plays by effect. The CS Mastemon obviously plays by effect. The Demon Lords obviously plays by effect. The Crosshearts plays by effect. The Rocks can play by effect using the new option they have in order to like actively get out their cards consistently. And then the Beelzemon on deletion of the level 5, I can't remember his name right now, on deletion of that guy, play out by effect. They are consistently all playing out by effect in some way, so all of your tamers will be making some use, as well as, even if they weren't not playing by effect, you would still be able to trigger them yourself on your opponent's turn. Yeah, just a really interesting scenario where currently I think the deck is in a prime spot to not only make use of its powers, but also because the meta they're amplified. And I think that's a beautiful scenario to be in. I think deck is as powerful as it's ever been currently. I would in fact say it's a wonderful meta call, and I am currently fighting against my urges to take it to Nationals. I know realistically I should take Sequoia to Nationals because I think it is primed to be one of the better decks in the format. However, it is so hard for me to resist the call of Dark Masters. How to make us sad? Well, there's a couple ways to make us sad. The obvious two are bouncing, as per the trampoline. If you put us on a trampoline and you bounce our level 5s or our level 6s or our security to hand, we are quite sad, actually, because we're not going to be able to make use of their security. We're not going to be able to make use of the on-deletion effects of our guys, and we're not going to be able to kind of do exactly what we wanted, unfortunately. But not as sad as Can't Play by Effect makes us. If you set up a Godsumon and we have no realistic way to out it, we break down into tears in front of you. You'll see a Dark Masters player threaten your life in some way. Honestly, it wouldn't be the first time, it wouldn't be the last time, because it is so debilitating for our already bad deck to be so readily fucked. Can't reduce play cost is another big one, though it's less big now with the Monzemon. It is still something that we are devastated by, because for some reason the way that the new level 6 Dark Masters work is that they are effects that reduce play cost. So both of the floodgates stop them in their tracks, and if you just hard play them out, they don't get deleted, which is sometimes a good thing, but a lot of times a bad thing, because you want them in security as a means of protecting them from getting bounced. So if your opponent is stopping you from playing by effect and bouncing you, you're in the worst state. You're in the worst state of your existence currently, and it is truly, truly a nightmare. And there are a lot of ways to actually play around the security effects. Since you know they're going to happen, it's like a trap card that is face up for Yu-Gi-Oh terms. You will be able to take steps and understand, like, hey, they're going to play out by effect assume the worst case scenario for you. Assume if like you have one Jumon out and he can only be bottom decked. Assume that we have Puppet in hand, and our Monzemon is going to come out and it's going to play out the Puppet and it's going to bottom deck you. So you have to try and play around that to some extent. I think that is one of the bigger things. It is like a knowledge check in some way. The deck is all about understanding what it does, and if you don't understand what this deck does, you are going to lose to it fairly consistently, unfortunately, unless you can just like beat over us with like aggression, which is another way to try and kill us. I think it's less effective than it used to be because of the way our tamers end up working now. We're able to start turning the huge amount of advantage that we give you into taxes, and we're able to tax you and start like slowing you down through those taxes and preventing you from doing everything that you would like to do, which I think is a very powerful thing. Final thoughts. I must say I am truly impressed with the way that Bandai has changed the deck. I am genuinely, when I say that, I was very, I think, initially upset with the new cards and how it felt like they had taken the deck that I had tried very hard to make good and crushed it underneath by saying, hey, your options are play the new cards, which would be probably better, but they're probably still not good enough, or the old cards. And it took me a little bit of time, a little bit of testing to be like, you know what, I'm going to switch, I'm going to adapt, I'm going to change, and I'm going to try and accept this new style of deck. And as I've played with it more, and as I've seen iterations and changes to the style of play in just the format in general, I can firmly say I love this deck. There is no deck I enjoy playing more right now than this Control Dark Masters list that I talked about prior on Tuesday. So if you want to see the list I've been talking about this whole time and playing with currently, please go watch the video from Tuesday. Otherwise, yeah, there's not much else to say. I truly, truly am in love with this deck again, and every time I take like a little bit of a break and I come back to it, I will tinker with it, and I will once again adapt and change the list and fall in love all over again with this very fun deck. And I would like to thank you all for watching to the end once more of my third Dark Masters primer, and I hope that you all get the same amount of enjoyment that I do, and in the future I will be able to steal things from your lists and say, wow, that was a really cool innovation that led us further to adaptation and destroying the cards that are currently popular in the meta. Thank you for watching. I have been ya boy. Please leave a like, comment, and subscribe. I wish you all the best. Have a wonderful rest of your day.